So in the next hour or so, I will try to outline the basis of nonviolent communication and to explain why it is a fundamental know-how, fundamental knowledge for every mediator and for really anyone who cares for good relationships, for those who deal with the conflict resolution, and ultimately for anyone who wants to live in peace. And at this point, I must issue a formal warning. Don't be afraid. Nonviolent communication is very easy to explain and to understand, but it takes a lot of effort to implement, a lot of commitment. So you will easily understand how it works, or at least I hope so, but that does not mean that you know your NVC unless you put yourself in the game and you practice it. And even so, it is a lifelong journey, so be aware. Nonviolent communication is not just another tool in your toolkit. It is a life-changing paradigm, a new vision of the world that will stick with you if you allow it. So what I want in my life is compassion, a flow between myself and others based on mutual giving from the heart. And this is, of course, a quote from Marshall Rosenberg, the founder, the inventor, the man who put together this method called nonviolent communication. And I'm sure most of you already know about it, but I'm trying to talk about nonviolent communication from the mediator's point of view. And let's see what we can do. So I'm going to speak briefly about the origins of the nonviolent communication. And then, of course, we'll talk about the four main components of it and the two directions of nonviolent communication, and observation, feelings, needs, and request for action, which are the four main components. And this is Marshall Rosenberg. So he was born in 1934 in Ohio, USA. And when he was aged 9 in 1943, he moved to Detroit, Michigan. And within weeks of his arrival, the city was rocked by a series of racial violence incidents. And when the riots were subdued and he returned to school, Marshall himself was a victim of discrimination. So from that moment on, and we know that because he recalls it in many of his books, from the rest of his life, Marshall never stopped asking himself two fundamental questions. The first being, what happens to disconnect us from our compassionate nature, leading us to behave violently? And the second one, what allows some people to stay connected to their compassionate nature under even the most trying circumstances? If we want to understand which factors influence our ability to connect empathically, we must recognize the importance of language and of words. Language and words play a key role because we, as human beings, we are essentially linguistic beings. That means that we see our world through the language. And in a way, we build our world through language. So it is important that our language is a non-violent one. NVC, nonviolent communication, is an approach to communication, to speaking and listening, the two directions, that helps us stay empathetically connected. NVC is a way to focus on needs, so that when we express ourselves, we can avoid automatic responses and let our words become an expression of our awareness of what we perceive, what we feel, and what we want in the end. By practicing nonviolent communication, we replace our old patterns of attack, avoidance, defense, judgment to focus on what we observe, what we feel, and what we really need. It all starts from our needs, from being aware of what we really need and to discover what we really need. We must discriminate, we must separate observation from judgment. We must know what we feel, what emotions we are experiencing. We must name it. We need a vocabulary to that. And usually we're not normally inclined to focus on our needs, and we are not usually taught to do so. Maybe some of you are familiar with a very known traditional story found in a variety of cultures from Turkey to China. It's the story of the old wise man who's looking for his key under a lamppost. You see the lamppost in my slide. There is this old man who's lost his key and is looking for it under a lamppost. So some friends approach him, asking, "What are you doing?" "I'm looking for my key." "Oh, let's help you." So they all go around and look for the key. After a while, the key is nowhere to be found. So one friend asks the old man, "But are you sure that you lost your key here?" And the old man answers, "Of course not, but the light is much better here." So this is essentially what we do with our need. We try to fulfill them in the wrong place, in the wrong way. This story is a perfect metaphor for what we do as a result of our cultural conditioning. We tend to look for what we think we need in places where we are quite frankly unlikely to find it. We have been raised, I'm speaking generally, we all have been raised thinking in terms of rewards and punishment, in terms of right and wrong, instead of thinking about our needs. So nonviolent communication is a way to fulfill frustrated needs that are the basis for negative emotions and for violent behavior. But let's take a step at a time. So the 4 components of nonviolent communication, as I said, are observation, feelings, needs, and action, or rather a request for action. And the 2 directions are listening and speaking from the heart. You know that Marshall Rosenberg used a nice metaphor and very useful one for this listening and speaking from the heart. He called it the giraffe speaking, and the ears of the giraffe's ears listening. And why? Because the giraffe has a very big heart, because she has to pump the blood up high to the brain. And so the giraffe is the mammal with the biggest heart on earth, as opposed as to the jackal. The jackal is very determined, self-serving, and the jackal is the metaphor of violent speaking. So if you look up for Marshall Rosenberg on Google, you will find many photographs of him holding 2 puppets, one of the giraffe and the other of the jackal, representing these 2 ways of communicating. But let's make an example. So imagine yourself coming home one night, very tired after a long day of work, and you find a kitchen very untidy. It's a mess. So the dishes are in the sink, there are crumbles on the table, dirt on the floor, and someone would say something like the sentence that I wrote, something like that: "What a mess." And then will pass to accuse the other person that we imagine living with him or with her in the house. You never wash the dishes. You are lazy. You're just like your brother or your wife or your fellow student or whatever, right? This is a normal, well, we call it normal reaction to the situation. But I want to show you that it is possible to not to react, but to talk, to act in another way, in a non-violent way, using the 4 components of the non-violent communication. Let's see. So the situation is the same. You come home late at night, you are very tired, and the kitchen is a mess. What would you say? Well, first of all, you observe. I can see that the dishes are still in the sink or the crumbles on the table, or whatever you like. And then you say how this makes you feel. You express your feelings. The fact that I see all this dirt, all these crumbles, all the dishes in the sink makes me feel frustrated and sad. But why is that? What is the fundamental need that is frustrated so that I feel so sad, so tired, so down? Because I'm tired and I need to relax when I come home. So you request for an action, a punctual request for a precise action. Would you please wash the dishes after breakfast? So let's see that again. In the first hypothesis, you come home and you say, what a mess. You never wash the dishes. You're lazy, just like your brother. But with nonviolent communication, using the 4 components, you would say something like that. I can see that the dishes are still in the sink, observation. This makes me feel frustrated and sad because I'm tired and I need to come home and relax. Would you please wash the dishes and wash the dishes always after breakfast? Can you see the difference? Well, I hope so, because the first sentence, the first example, is a violent one. Let's see why. What a mess. A mess is a judgment. It's not an observation. The right observation would be to describe exactly what you see. A mess is a judgment, therefore it's violent. You never wash the dishes. Well, there is a generalization in that. You never. Is it true? You never, ever, ever wash the dishes? You are lazy. Well, this is an insult. This is a judgment. Just like your brother, a comparison, and again, a judgment. So this is a violent way of expressing yourself. Instead, in the other example, you express yourself through the 4 components of nonviolent communication, and this is a nonviolent communication. But let's take us one step at a time. The first component of nonviolent communication is observation, as in observation versus judgment. You have to be able to discriminate between the two, because sometimes, and I'm addressing here my fellow mediators, we genuinely and in good faith think that we are not judging, when in fact we are. So how do you discriminate? Well, nonviolent communication gives you some excellent way to understand how to do that. Marshall Rosenberg found 3 main ways when you can judge instead of observe. And the first way is giving moralistic judgments. So certain ways of communicating pull us away from our natural state of compassion. Moralistic judgments, judgments that imply being right or wrong, block empathic communication. We learn from a young age to express ourselves impersonally in a categorizing way, in a way that doesn't show what we have inside. We spend time assessing levels of wrongness. If you don't believe me, I make you an example. For instance, if my mother calls me 5 times a day, she's nagging. She's nagging at me. But if she calls me once a week, she's disinterested in me with all the intermediate degrees of wrongness that we can imagine. Example, if she calls me at times every day and at times sporadically, she's not methodical or consistent. If she keeps me on the phone for a long time, she's logorrheic. If she keeps her phone calls short, she's telegraphic. We really have a judgment for everything. Normally, we express them in a very synthetic way, so they're not easy to catch. I don't usually say, see, my mother calls me 5 times a day, therefore she's nagging. No, she's nagging. That's it. So if someone told you in this very situation, a mother calling 5 times a day, let's say in a mediation, my mother is nagging, she's nagging. What would be the right question to ask? What would you do in order to lead the focus of that person from judgment, she's nagging, to observing? What would you ask? Well, the first question that you could ask is, what's going on? The queen of all the open questions, right? What's going on? What are the facts that make you say that she is nagging? What have you observed? Well, I have observed that she calls me 5 times a day. But this is also an inaccurate observation, and you, as a mediator, need to understand more, to understand what's going on here. So maybe you could ask, how long has she been calling you 5 times a day? Well, since last week. And then what would you ask as a mediator? What would you ask? Well, what happened last week? What happened? Anything in particular? Oh, well, last week she was diagnosed with lung failure and prescribed a breathing machine. So the right observation would be, my mom has been calling me 5 times a day for a week now, since when she was prescribed a breathing machine for her lung failure. You see the difference? Now, if you want, you can say that she's nagging, but at least this is not violent. This is an accurate description of what is happening. And you, as a mediator, have asked some important questions that make you understand what's going on in a kind way, in the right way, digging through observation instead of through judgment. Because if you ask, if the person say she's nagging, and you say why, simply, which is a good question, but it can escalate the judgment. Well, because she always does that, because she's nasty, she's whatever, right? You have to be accurate, and nonviolent communication teaches you to do so. Judgment are a tricky thing. It is relatively easy to say, well, I'm not judging, but it's just as easy to escalate them. So you must be aware of that. Do you understand now why I say that this kind of judgment, this moralistic judgment, are violent? If I say that my mother is disinterested in me because she never calls, disinterested, it's a judgment, it's a very violent one, because it passes off as observation, as an absolute truth, something that is just in my mind. It distances me from the real needs that the situation expresses. It distances me from life, as Marshall Rosenberg would put it. And then another way to block empathy is comparison. Oh, you behave just like him, you behave just like her, just like your brother, just like your friend, just like whatever. And as Marshall Rosenberg says, if you want to get depressed, compare everything you've done in your life to what Mozart had accomplished aged 12, and you're good to go. So comparison are never, hardly ever a good way to go. And unfortunately, it is something that we do quite often. I mean, as a parent, I have the temptation to do it quite often. Look at your friend, look at their homework, look at how they behave. Comparison is not a good way to go. And it's a judgment, therefore it is violent. And then there is, of course, denying responsibility, such as, if that's the case, there must be some good reason. There must be some good reason, which are? You never assume in nonviolent communication. You explain, you connect with your compassionate nature. There are things that need to be done, period. How many times have you heard the sentences like that? This is denying responsibility. There are things that needs to be done. Please explain me why. Oh, this is one of my favorites. You make me feel guilty. Sorry about that. But no one can make you feel anything. It's you, it's your feelings, it's your emotions. You are responsible for them. It's your responsibility. So when we deny our responsibilities and when we attribute them to something or someone else, we are being violent. This is the right one for me. I am overweight. This is an example. I am overweight because my mother was overweight. So here's your explanation. I'm sorry, but this is not the case. I am overweight because I'm eating too much. This is taking responsibility. This is non-violent. This one is also for me. It's stronger than me. I have to smoke. Oh, no, it's not. It's not something impersonal away from you. It's you that are smoking. So violence that comes from these expressions is really a tragic expression of unmet needs. It's the manifestation of helplessness of a person so deprived of resources that he thinks that his words are not enough to make him or her understood. So there is attack, shout, assault. But in fact, if we build a good non-violent vocabulary, then we become able to express ourselves in the right way. We become able to dig down to our needs. And then we have no need to become violent, not physically, not with our language. So if you want, I will invite you to make a very short exercise. As you can see, there are 10 sentences on the screen. Some of them are judgment and some of them are not. So if you just pick up a pen or a pencil and write down very quickly the numbers of the sentences that you think are judgment and the numbers of the sentences that you think are observation. I'll give you 5 seconds. Because while you read and write, I keep on talking. The first element of nonviolent communication is to carefully separate observation from judgment. Any judgment, even a positive one, is always subjective. When we mix observation and judgment, the other person is likely to resent the criticism and resist or be defensive about what we say. And this is not a good way to build common ground to work, talking about mediation. So, back to the exercise. Yesterday, John got mad at me for no reason at all. Well, for no reason at all, it's an evaluation, it's a judgment, let's say. The same goes from John got angry. So the first sentence is a plain and simple judgment. The second sentence, last night while watching television, Nancy was biting her nails. Well, this is an observation. I hope that we agree on that. Tom didn't ask, number 3, Tom didn't ask my opinion during the meeting. This is an observation. My father is an excellent man. This is a judgment. A positive one, but still a judgment. Albert talks too much, of course, a judgment, too much. Tom is aggressive, of course, a judgment. This week, Anne came in first every day. This is an observation. My son often doesn't brush his teeth. Well, often could be seen as a judgment. We must be wary of the adverb, but it's in the middle, more a judgment than an observation. Amy told me that yellow doesn't look good on me. Well, it's simply something that I report from having heard from Amy, so it can be considered as an observation. My aunt complains when I talk to her. Complaints is a judgment, right? I hope that you can compare what you've written with what I said. And then the second component of nonviolent communication, which is, sorry, I can't see. All right. Identifying and expressing feelings. Under the term feelings, NVC includes physical sensations, emotions, feelings, everything. So let's make another little experiment, if you wish. Take your pencil or open a document on your computer and please write down all the emotions, feelings that come to mind. Please do that, at least in your mind. Because if you do so, well, I've done this experiment many, many times, and the results are more or less always the same. Generally, people write down more negative feelings than positive one, and the list usually includes some things that are not feelings at all, and that is because we are lacking of vocabulary. We are not trained to express our feelings, and most of the time we focus on the negatives one. So the vocabulary that we have for judging others, for attributing wrongs and rights, it's normally larger than the vocabulary that we use to express our emotional states. So one of the jobs that you have to do if you want to practice nonviolent communication is to enlarge your vocabulary, enrich your vocabulary with words. Because if you don't know how to name a feelings, you are very likely not to recognize it or to misinterpret it. And if you can't name precisely what you're feeling, how are you supposed to go deeper to your needs? So language is important. and expansion of positive language is a fundamental part of nonviolent communication. And often the expression "I feel" is used in the wrong way, meaning not in the wrong way, imprecisely. I feel that, well, but this is not a feeling, this is an opinion. I feel like going, I don't know. Again, this is not a feeling. I feel as if, I feel you are. All these feel are not representing feelings, are simply judgments, right? I feel like you don't love me. This is not a feeling at all. This is a projection on someone else. When you don't say hello to me, I feel ignored. Well, this is a feeling. Can you see the difference? By developing an emotional vocabulary that allows us to describe our emotions clearly and accurately, we can more easily connect with others. Showing our vulnerability and expressing our feelings can help resolve conflict. Nonviolent communication also distinguishes real feelings from words that describe thoughts, judgment, and interpretation. So again, if you wish, what happened? Okay. Here again, there is a list of 10 sentences. Some of them express feelings, some other don't. Well, the number one, I already said it. I feel you don't love me. This is not the expression of feeling. I am sad that you are leaving. Yes, this is expressing a feeling. When you say this, I am afraid. Yes, this is a feeling. When you don't say good morning to me, I feel ignored. Yes. I'm glad you can come. Yes. You are disgusting. No, this is a judgment. I feel like I could hit you. This is not a feeling at all. I feel misunderstood. And this is not a feeling, because misunderstanding is not a feeling. I feel confused. I feel sad. I feel angry. But I feel misunderstood implies that there's someone who's misunderstanding me. But feelings come from inside, come from yourself, not from some external party. When I see what you do for me, I feel happy. Yes, I am a nobody. No, this is not a feeling, right? And then the third component, needs. Of course, this is the Maslow pyramids. Marshall Rosenberg was a psychologist by trade at the beginning of his career, so he knew it. And these are the needs we are dealing with. As you all know, the needs at the bottom of the pyramid are the most essential one, meaning that without fulfilling them, we cannot live. And then going on. When we connect at the needs level, we connect on a common plane, that is the plane of humanity. Starting from needs, even the most exacerbated conflicts can be resolved. Judgments about others are alienated expressions of one's own need. If you don't get deep down to the level of the needs, you are not doing a good job, right? As I said before, when I say you don't understand me, for example, in expressing a judgment about someone, I'm actually saying that I have an unmet need for understanding. But instead of saying I need to be understood, I'm accusing someone else, I'm judging someone else. You don't understand. You see the difference? I hope so. And again, a list of sentences. I feel sad because you didn't wish me a happy birthday. Well, I have a need to, I'd like to be celebrated. This is my frustrated need. I'm disappointed because you didn't fulfill the commitment you made. Well, I'm disappointed because I need consistency between words and actions. So it's not about your commitment, it's about my need of consistencies. I need you to visit me, but the need here is I need to nurture our relationship. Instead of saying, I need to nurture our relationship, I need some closeness to you, I say, I need you to visit me. What is this? An imposition. It's violent. I need more time to talk. This is not an expression of a need, because the need here is, I need to go at my own pace. I need solidarity. Yes, this is the expression of a need. I would like more clarity. Okay. I would like you to be silent when I'm talking. Where is the need here? My need, the need of the person who's talking. The need here would be, I need calm, I need concentration, right? And then the request. Once you've done all your journey through the 4 main components of nonviolent communication, of course, you do not come out and say, do something. Once you said, I can see that the dishes are in the sink, and that makes me feel sad because I need the kitchen to be tidy, because I need to relax. Please do something. Well, it's not believable, right? Nonviolent communication does not use generalization. Your request must be accurate, precise, and kind if possible. But once you've already gone through the first 3 steps, the last one really is the easiest, in my opinion. So again, the 4 main components of nonviolent communication: observation, expression of feelings with a good, rich vocabulary, the expression of needs, the frustrated needs that make feelings emerge, and then an accurate and precise request. And you do all of this with the language. And this is why, if we want peace, we must speak peace. We must speak in a non-violent manner. This is the only way. Here, our reading list coming directly from the official non-violent communication website. And here, a link. And that would be all for me. Grazie mille, which means thanks a lot in Italian.
Grazie mille, Maria Francesca. It was, I feel happy right now after all this information and this wonderful presentation you made for us. Are there any questions? I saw one question before. Can I read it out to you? Mona Lisa wrote, my question is, what if the opposite person reacts violently when I try to politely ask them to do something? How do I deal in such situation if that is something they do very often?
Okay. Marsha Rosenberg said, first of all, you stop the violence. Okay. So it's no use trying to use nonviolent communication while someone is beating you or aiming at you with a gun. First of all, put the guns away, stop punching it, the violence, the physical violence, stop it, and then we can talk. Was that the question? I think so.
I think so.
Yes.
Please. Mona Lisa. If not, then please open your microphones. You can also ask questions directly.
Yes, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is one other question. Lazold asked, can the violent communication also be part of our self-talk?
Of our?
Self-talk. Maybe, Lazold, can you please elaborate a little bit more what you mean? Do you mean self-reflection? Or inner conflicts? Okay, maybe you can write a little bit more about this.
Self-talk. And so I just want to add this. Embracing nonviolent communication takes a lot of work. Now I just outlined it in less than an hour, but really just making the first judgment against versus observation, the first component right, it takes a lot of work. Once you have acquired it, then you got it. You use it simply in any circumstances, because you cannot go back. Because once you've seen the difference between observation and judgment, that's it. There are no instances where I do not use it. I don't know if that answers the question.
And you mentioned it, non-violent.
Self-empathy. Yes, of course. Of course. Well, I didn't have to, this is just a short outline. There are, and I chose to focus on the 4 main components because it's something that you can immediately sense, right? But of course, yes, we should talk about self-empathy too with nonviolent communication.
I just want to announce that we have early next year, we are going to start a masterclass series, and one of those masterclasses will be nonviolent communication also. So there would be some room for more and also training. But let's continue with the question. Can you explain how nonviolent communication can be used in reframing and mediation?
Yes. So when we reframe in mediation, we have to focus on the positive aspects of what someone has just said. In nonviolent terms, this means someone just said something in a violent manner. How can we translate it into a nonviolent communication? First, separate observation from judgment. So anything that is a synthetic judgment, like the example that I did with my mother, right? You keep asking questions and reframing all together so that you can slowly understand when the observation starts and when the judgment begins, and hopefully the person you are reframing follows you in the way. Really, it's just more easy done than explained.
And Mandana, you wanted to ask a question. Sorry, I have seen you. Oh, you just wrote in the chat. You can open your mic and ask it.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
hello, Mandana. Nice to see you again.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. My question is about when we try to use NVC language, but the others don't use it and don't know about it. It makes the situation very difficult. What can we do in these situations?
No.
I know that we should continue, but it is very difficult.
I agree with you. It is very difficult. I disagree with you in the sense that using nonviolent communication does not necessarily require that people with whom we communicate are aware of nonviolent communication or use it. You just use it. And again, when you start using nonviolent communication, everything is a little rusty. So you use the 4 component, I can see that, but when you are in the mood of nonviolent communication, you just connect from your heart. And if you feel that talking would make things worse, you just listen. And then you find the right moment to jump in with your heart open, saying what is needed. But absolutely, nonviolent communication does not require that the people talking are both talking nonviolently. No. Okay, but I know it's difficult. It's true. I agree with you.
Yes, but in my experience, for example, I say my husband, he thinks that I am pretending to something. I am playing a role, and it made the situation very difficult for me.
So surely your husband or a close relative can understand if you are faking it or not. If it comes from the heart, if it is a close relative, he or she can sense it. So is that a non-understanding, or is it a way for the other person to mask himself from a conversation heart to heart? And if so, what are the reasons? Are you to respect it, or are you to try and find another way to communicate? Just some reflections. I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, one thing. Sorry, Andrea.
Yeah, we have so one.
I thought maybe I should explain for him that, of course, I am trying to learn it, and I am somehow I am pretending because I want to learn. And I am playing a role. And
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know what I usually do when I teach nonviolent communication in person? I give the class a little paper, like a business card, with the 4 main components written down. And I said to the students, carry it with you wherever you go, in your pocket. And when you feel that you need to express yourself precisely with nonviolent communication, take it up, read it, and do it. So the first time you do that, it's quite hilarious and it's very difficult, I know. But the more you do it, the better you become at, and then it just becomes an habit of yours. So at the beginning, yes, it's difficult, because you are trying to, what should I say? So I say this is my feelings, this is my feeling, why don't you understand me? Yes, it's difficult, sorry. I said at the very beginning that nonviolent communication is a lifelong journey. Be patient.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions more, and there is also Yaha. I just read a question from the chat, and then it's you, and then I think we should slowly come to an end,
of course,
because you said you will be 1 hour with us. So can a person be violent in his communication despite using appropriate language by using inappropriate tone? What is the role of tone in a communication?
A very important one. A very important one. I didn't touch upon it because of time limits, but a very important time. I can see that the dishes in the sink are dirty. And that makes me feel very sad, very sad. The words are the same, but my tone, of course, It's not the right one. The point is, you have to connect to your compassionate nature. It's not just some mechanism that you put in place. It's not just the correct words. This is why I said at the very beginning, even if you understand nonviolent communication, that doesn't mean that you are, let's say, a good practitioner, an excellent practitioner. No, it takes time, because it takes all of your being, not only word. We started with words, and language is the easiest part. But then comes everything else. Please, I want to make sure that this is clear. Non-violent communication is not some tricks that you can use. It's so much more. And it implies your connection with your real nature, which is a compassionate one. I don't want to be misunderstood on this.
Yaha, you wanted to ask a question.
Hello, Yaha.
Hi, Francesca. Very nice to see you again. You said that if your opposite party is violent, you need to calm him or her down. Then,
Yes.
To do this, do you have any sentence or phrases at hand which works like pouring water on the fire in this situation?
When someone is about to become violent, you mean?
Is very violent and you need to calm him or her down. So you need a sentence or phrase at hand which use it just like pouring water on the fire. And it,
you mean physically violent?
Maybe he or she is screaming on you or is very angry, or I don't know, like this. Not only physical, but maybe in speaking, in you know, he shout on you, he speak too loud and screaming on you.
First of all, let's make a difference. It's very different, physical violence from verbal violence. If someone becomes physically violent, you have to restrain it.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's it. If someone starts screaming or being rude or being violent, well, it depends. Sometimes I just listen and let him lash out whatever it has to do. But depending on the circumstances, sometimes, well, I put my foot down and I say something like, well, you know, I'm a lady. You cannot talk to me like that. It depends. There are many factors involved. I cannot be more accurate in general circumstances. I can be more precise with a precise example. Sorry.
There is another question, I think, a little bit related to that, and that is April, who asked, how are you defining non-violent in this context? The term is typically used in relation to physical aggression.
So, non-violent is everything and anything that connects us with our true nature, empathic nature. You must know that when in the late 60s, I think, the term nonviolent communication was started to be used, Marshall Rosenberg didn't like it because he had a negation, a non in it. So he didn't like it. But then these terms reminded it of Mahatma Gandhi and the culture of non-violence, which he appreciated, Marshall Rosenberg, and then it became popular, so he kept it. Yes, non-violence is used mostly for physical violence, but Marshall used it for language and for communication. He did. So we are just following his footsteps.
And I'm just reading in the chat, April, that you said you have found an answer online. Any communication that causes pain or harm to anyone, including ourselves, is violent, while any communication that stems from true compassion is non-violent. Thank you for adding this.
Thank you.
And there is one comment, and I think maybe you already kind of answered it in your in what you have said before, because Pomulani said it appears that nonviolent communication is just meant to comfort the other party, only without necessarily considering my own feelings.
How is so? No, nonviolent communication is all about personal responsibility, our responsibility for our language, our thought, our feelings, our needs. In which way is just meant to comfort the other party? No. If I gave this impression, I was mistaken. This is not possible. It's not meant to comfort the other party. It's meant to create a connection with the other party. An honest one. Comfort has no place here.
Okay. And then Britta commented, she said, what I like about the 4 points is that you have to pause, reflect, and then continue. It reflects violent communication from your own side.
Yes, correct.
And there is one last question, but I think this question might be a complex question for this context. It is, can you explain more about empathy in nonviolent communication?
Barbara,
maybe you can
hello,
just
Barbara.
touch,
Yes.
touch on it. Yeah.
So empathy is about recognizing that we are all human. We all have a common ground, and we connect to that plan of humanity. This is empathy. I recognize that you are a human being, such as I am. This is ultimate definition for me of empathy, and is connected to nonviolent communication, because nonviolent communication does just that. It allows you to connect yourself with your ultimate nature, which in turn allows you to connect with anyone else's nature, which is human nature. Okay, having said that, this is too short and too synthetic, right? It tends to be naive. It's not. It's just that we are short of time, and but it's not.
Thank you so much. I saw there are some compliments for you in the chat.
Thank
so
you.
Please,
thank you.
please take the time and read it. I thank you so much for this fantastic webinar.